It is July 1. A happy Monday and a happy 4th of July week to you and yours. This is the Believe in White Sox podcast, and I thank you so much for joining us here this morning. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you hit like, hit subscribe, tell a friend, tell your friend to tell their friend to go stand out on a street corner and have a sign that says like, listen, and subscribe to Believe in White Sox. Even if it happens to be in a city like Denver, Colorado, where there probably aren't a whole lot of White Sox fans. Speaking of Denver, Colorado, I just picked that city as an example to segue into talking about the White Sox over the weekend. The White Sox took 2 of 3 from the Colorado Rockies. It was a solid starting pitching performance across the board from all 3 guys that pitched over the weekend. We'll start with Friday's game. White Sox end up with a 5-3 win over Colorado. I am really impressed with Drew Thorpe, and we're not going to have a long show today, but I do want to make a point about where I think this White Sox team is going to be able to have a saving grace moving forward. Drew Thorpe goes 6 innings, allows 2 runs on just 2 hits, walks 1, strikes out 4. He allows 1 homer. That was to Brenton Doyle, a 2-run shot in the 6th inning. But the White Sox bullpen did its job. Tanner Banks gave up a run, got a hold. John Brebbia has been solid of late, scoreless inning, and then Michael Kopech with another save, his 2nd in a row and his 7th of the year. Then on Saturday, White Sox end up pounding Colorado 11-3. Home runs all across the board. Luis Robert hit his 9th. Paul DeJong hit his 15th. Corey Lee hit his 8th. And Lenyn Sosa hit his 3rd. So you got that. And then you also had Jonathan Cannon with 5 2/3 of 3-run ball, 3 hits, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. Tanner Banks ended up actually getting the win out of the bullpen in that game. And today, or rather yesterday, I should say, as we're recording this here on a Monday morning, White Sox end up losing 5-4 in 14 innings. And as I've said before, I don't think any of what the White Sox do right now is really that relevant because of the MLB draft rules. Tanking is really not a thing anymore. So I think for the White Sox, there's definitely an opportunity for them to just see what they have. Now, when you look at the way that this team played in this game, Garrett Crochet was once again just absolutely awesome. He gets a no decision. He goes 7 innings. He strikes out 11 and allows just 5 hits, 2 runs, doesn't walk anybody. Mike Soroka takes the loss out of the bullpen. He goes 4 innings, all in extra innings, allows just 1 hit, gives up 2 unearned runs. Now, for those that are unaware, the runner that starts on second base in extra innings, that run is automatically unearned to the pitcher. So that's why you see the 2 unearned runs. He ends up giving up runs in the 13th inning and in the 14th inning. But my main topic for today's show, as the White Sox take 2 of 3, they're playing a team in Colorado that is basically slightly better than them. They're really better than them in name only. In Colorado, they've got a lot of issues in terms of what they do organizationally. They have a lot of veterans, guys that, like Charlie Blackmon, that's having one of the worst years of his career. He had some great years in the past. Chris Bryant is off injured. He's in the 3rd year of a 7-year contract. And I think a lot of Chicagoans really feel for Chris Bryant in terms of the struggles that he has had. But I think what this weekend told me, and there was a Bob Nightingale report that came out on Sunday that was a little bit upsetting to me, in that the White Sox are going to try and trade Garrett Crochet. I said it a couple of shows ago that Garrett Crochet is a guy that is the future. He's the future of this franchise. And it's not, after watching this series, it's not just one starting pitcher and then you just have to hope that you can develop other guys. I think you look at Drew Thorpe's track record, being a guy that got drafted in the 2022 draft, got traded twice this offseason. Drew Thorpe rose through the New York Yankees system very quickly. He got traded to San Diego in the deal that sent Juan Soto to the Yankees. And then he got traded to the White Sox in the deal that sent Dylan Cease to the Padres. Drew Thorpe is somebody that you look at what he's done at every level of the minor leagues and you say, okay, this guy has what it takes. In High A Hudson Valley in 2023, and he didn't end up pitching any minor league ball in 2022. In 2023, he went 10-2 in Hudson Valley with a 2.81 ERA and 18 starts. Over 109 innings, he walked 33, struck out 138, and had a whip of 1.07. He gets the call up to AA Somerset late in the year, and he allows just 5 runs in 30 in the third innings. That's a 1.48 ERA. He goes to Birmingham to start this year, and it should be made mention of that he has not pitched at AAA. He skipped AAA when the White Sox called him up. At Birmingham this year, he was 7-1 with a 1.35 ERA in 60 innings of work, 56 strikeouts to just 17 walks. He allowed only 3 homers in those 60 innings, which you think about that many innings of work and that few homers, that means he's keeping the ball on the ground. Not a big strikeout pitcher because he is averaging less than 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, but honestly, I don't think that starting pitchers necessarily need to have the highest Ks per 9 ratio. And then since he's come up to the bigs, he's been okay. Maybe he's not ready, but I think what you saw on Friday is a guy that can compete at the big league level and a guy that's young. I think that's the thing about him. He's young. And the same with Jonathan Cannon. Now, Jonathan Cannon, who was a White Sox draft pick out of Georgia, 3rd round in 2022, he hasn't necessarily shown throughout the minors that he's as good as Drew Thorpe, but these guys are of the age. 23 years old is Thorpe. Cannon is also 23 years old. Crochet is only 25. If they invest in Crochet, they can have a rotation of Cannon, Thorpe, Crochet, and then maybe whoever it is that they draft that they feel like is a college arm that could be up here in a couple of years. That's how I see what the White Sox should be doing. And I'm glad that the young guys are getting to start. I want to see more young guys start. I want to see guys that get added to the 40-man that you feel like are going to be able to get a lot of innings in 2025. And they should be getting a lot of innings in 2024. Whether or not Pedro Grifol is the manager next year or if Ethan Katz is the pitching coach, I think is a completely irrelevant question. It's an irrelevant point. Organizationally, Chris Getz has to put in place on that roster, his roster management, he needs to put the guys on that roster, especially in the starting rotation, that you feel like can develop on the fly and will be able to give you big league innings for the next year. Guys that, as I call it, the sink or swim philosophy. You cannot freak out when a guy has a couple of bad starts and ends up, how do I say this without swearing? You can't freak out when a guy spits the bit. That's the kindest way that I can put it. You cannot stress if a guy spits the bit. And the White Sox are in a situation where they're playing with house money. What does it matter if guys don't succeed right away? You want to develop them to succeed. And I think that having young, controllable arms that you don't have to put on big contracts yet, which is exactly where you were at with Lucas Giolito and Dane Dunning and Dylan Cease 5 years ago. Those are the guys that you want to be part of your organization for the next 4 to 5 years. And I know I keep repeating it. It's my big picture philosophy. You have to have the guys that are going to be in your organization in 2027 and beyond that. So when I see the reports that say that they're going to try and trade Garrett Crochet, to me, that's foolhardy. You don't, especially given the fact that he's already gotten a TJ, you don't have to give him an exorbitant amount of money. And this is the problem with Jerry Reinsdorf as the owner of this team. This is somebody that doesn't believe, and granted, the owner seems to be part of the decisions that get made on the baseball operations level, especially when it comes financially. Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't believe in giving long-term contracts to starting pitchers. I actually do agree with him there. But here's the problem in terms of trying to sign premier free agents. You have to rob your future to pay your present. That's what you have to do. You have to rob your future to pay your present, which means, think about Garrett Cole. Think about the Garrett Cole contract with New York. Are the last 2 years of that contract going to be productive years? No. No way. Garrett Cole is not going to be what he is now, or rather what he was 5 years ago when he's finishing up that 9-year deal. But the Yankees don't care. The Yankees would rather pay him to get them to a World Series now. Now, I know that Garrett Cole is not necessarily the best example. I got to remember, is Garrett Cole hurt right now? My apologies that I don't actually know this, but yeah, Garrett Cole has been on the IL for a significant amount of time. Again, this is a White Sox podcast. This is not a New York Yankees podcast. So, Garrett Cole actually got back. He, I think, just came off the injured list actually yesterday. So, let me look at the box score from that game. And I know that this is absolutely riveting to anybody watching on video, and based on our current YouTube views, there aren't a ton of you actually watching on video, so we don't have to necessarily worry too much about it. But I'm going down this rabbit hole because I actually want to know what Garrett Cole actually did. I know that nobody actually cares about what. All right, 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 6 strikeouts. It was only his. CBS Sports app is not great when it comes to. All right, so he just returned a couple of weeks ago. He'd been out for quite a while, but anywho, words, trying to come up with words, and we'll come up with more words as I lead into my next topic. But actually, to finish up on the previous topic, as I was just randomly sidetracked by thinking about what Garrett Cole did, Garrett Crochet is somebody that you don't have to give a huge contract to. Basically, the kind of contract you have to give him is the contract that buys out his arbitration years. That's all you have to do. And based on the way he's performing this year, you have to do that. This is a guy you drafted in 2020. Don't give up on him yet. Pay the man. Give him one of the contracts that's going to keep him secure for a long time. You have to take the risk. You have to give a guy a longer term contract so that he's here when your organization is ready to compete again. And I think the White Sox are going to give themselves starting pitching options that they can develop to be part of a good rotation 2 to 3 years from now. Where the lineup stands at that point remains to be seen, but I think they have the makings of a rotation that could be stabilizing this organization in the next couple of years. They're at least letting the kids pitch. And to me, I think that you don't need to see any more of the Chris Flexens or the Mike Clevengers of the world. You don't need that. That's not the future. But what I did want to talk about is now that we've entered July, you have to find a trade partner for guys that are going to have some value. The guys that don't mean anything to the future of your organization beyond this year. Who are those guys? Those are not the Andrew Benintendi's. Those are the Nicky Lopez's, the Paul DeJongs, the Mike Clevingers, the Tommy Phams of the world. Lord, if anybody would take him, Martin Maldonado. But the problem with Martin Maldonado is offensively, he's so bad that he's not worth anything to anybody. That's a guy that you would trade for a player to be named later, and he probably goes to a contending team as a third catcher or just a veteran insurance option, so you don't have to bring somebody up from Double A that's not on the 40-man and end up having to start his clock earlier. That's the only reason that you would trade Martin Maldonado. But Paul DeJong's got 15 homers on July 1st. That's a guy that's going to have some value. Paul DeJong isn't the same Paul DeJong he was in his early years with the Cardinals. And granted, he made a big base running goof in the Tigers series last week. But I also think that Paul DeJong is somebody that can fetch you a mid-level prospect. He's not going to get you a top 15 prospect, but he can get you somebody that you might be able to develop. There's no use hanging on to these guys. You have to start finding deals for some of these guys. Or maybe you wait until July 30th, which is the trade deadline this year, and say, what injuries come about? How can we leverage some of these guys into higher picks? Or I would say better prospect value, not higher picks. I keep thinking that you can trade draft picks, but at the end of the day, the Chicago White Sox have to realize that there wasn't much of a point in signing some of these veterans to one-year deals unless they wanted to actually offload them if they weren't competitive. The fact that after the season they even signed Tommy Pham or Mike Clevinger might just have been a reaction to the fact that they were 3-23 to start the year. I think it was 3-23. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was 3-21 or 3-23. But the point remains is the fact they got off to a historically bad start, and you need to save face at least putting out major league veterans that might actually help your team compete a little bit and not look like a complete laughingstock, which the White Sox, the month of April, looked like a complete joke. It was one of the worst months by any team in modern baseball history. So you have to start making those calls if you're Chris Getz. You have to call those teams in the National League that are all bunched up in the wild card. I had made mention of on our reboot episode last Monday that there could be trade partners up north. I especially think that Paul DeJong might look good in Cubby Blue because of the fact that the Cubs middle infielders have no power. The Cubs infield is powerless. They need some sort of pop if they're going to find their way back into this. And the last week, losing 3 of 4 to the Giants and losing 2 of 3 to the Brewers, that may have shot the Cubs completely out of the division. I think they were out of the division already, and I think it puts them behind the 8 ball in terms of what they're doing in the wild card. You've got to find a trade partner somewhere. It's probably going to be in the National League. You're not going to trade within your own division. So take the Twins, take the Guardians, take the Royals out of it. Maybe Tampa Bay in the American League East wants a Tommy Pham. I think he played with them before. Tommy Pham's kind of like the Patrick Beverly of Major League Baseball, just a guy that's got an attitude that keeps going around from team to team to team. The American League West, I don't know what to think about the American League West. Maybe a Paul DeJong as a fourth, a utility option infielder for the Mariners, but that's the only team in the division that I feel like needs a guy like that. The Astros already are set. Maybe the Astros want to bring Martin Maldonado back again. I don't know. You've got to start finding deals for these guys. But it also means that you have to make abundantly clear who you're committing to. And the episode I want to talk about on Wednesday is going to end up being, what is the future of Andrew Vaughn? And have you reached a pivot point to where he's not a part of the franchise's future. So we're going to talk a lot about Andrew Vaughn on Wednesday, but I told you we did not have a lot. Off to Cleveland on Tuesday for a 3-game set against the Guardians, and then they get to see their old buddy Tim Anderson as they go down to Miami for a 3-game weekend set on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Lone Depot Park. I think that's what it's called. But anyways, that's it for this edition of Believe in White Sox. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great Monday. We will talk to you on Wednesday.